Welcome, everybody. I am so excited to see a lot of people registering for today's webinar. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining the webinar. And in the next 30 to 40 odd minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you some very important information that is life-changing, which I can assure you is very, very hard to find anywhere in the world today. First of all, let me know if you can hear me. Just type yes in the chat box on the right. And also feel free to start dropping your questions as the webinar progresses. Okay. I'll try as much as I can to answer every single question. And if for any reason your question is not answered, feel free to send an email and I'll pick it up with a detailed response. I can assure you that. And the email address will be shared towards the end of the webinar. In today's webinar, we are going to be talking about how to become a DevOps engineer in 3 months, earning salary from $150K a year. Now, this is not just some wish thinking. This is for real. It has happened with a lot of people that get into the Direct.io DevOps bootcamp training. And I'm also going to get into a lot of details on how that happens, how it can happen, and how it's been happening. We'll get into some details and address questions such as what is the secret sauce that can make it possible even in 6 weeks, just like one of our students who landed a job as a cloud platform engineer just 6 weeks after joining the program. You can see in our Slack channel where he was so excited and announced the news. So sit back, relax. You are going to have a lot of fun with so much information that's going to be coming out from me today. I'd like to request that we wait for another 2 minutes just to allow others to join and settle down. By the way, there are 2 special gifts waiting for you on this webinar today. So you need to wait to the end to claim your special gift. All right, I can see a few more people are just joining the session. Thank you very much. If you're still with me, I'd like you to type yes in the chat box. And if you have settled down and want us to progress in the webinar, just type proceed. Okay, I can see a few proceed coming up already. Thank you very much. Okay, I can see a lot of proceed coming up. All right, cool. So let's get started. I'd like to get you to know that today we are going to be talking about how to start a career in DevOps without qualification or experience. It is true that in DevOps, you need a lot of experience to transition into the career. And there are a whole lot of misconception around whether or not you need to have a qualification or some certification before you can even start applying for DevOps jobs. In as much as that may be true to some extent, it is not a requirement to get a DevOps job. And we're going to go deep into all of that today by sharing with you the secrets to getting through the door without any prior qualification or experience in IT. Before I go on, I'd like to quickly introduce myself. My name is Dario Lufumlaya, and I've been around IT for a while now, doing quite a few things around data, big data, software engineering. I've worked with both private and public organizations here in the UK, deploying big data solutions from Oracle to SQL Server to Hadoop, and so many DevOps specific technologies around Terraform, Ansible, Docker, Kubernetes, Helm, Istio, AWS Cloud, and so many. I've also worked in the capacity of a cloud solutions architect. I'm a DevOps evangelist, both for startups and big organizations. I'm also a technopreneur because I have my own startup companies in PropTech and EdTech. And most importantly, I'm a career mentor because I help a lot of people make career decisions, especially when it comes to DevOps. So, who are the target audience for today's webinar? Number 1, if you have no prior education in computing, I'd like to talk to you because this is for you. If you want to make a career switch, into DevOps, regardless of where you're coming from, even if you were a nurse or an accountant or whatever you may be doing before, this is definitely a webinar that will give you all the information you need to make that smooth career switch. And if you want to make a career upgrade, say you're currently working as a software tester or a business analyst or a project manager, and you want to become much more technical in what you're doing, or maybe you're a software developer, you want to go into operations side of things with DevOps practice, then definitely you need to listen to what I've got to share with you today. And how about if you're a fresh graduate, you're not really sure of what direction you need to go, then I really want to talk to you as well to help you make that decision. All right, before I go any further, I'd like to know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, please type in the chat box yes, yes, yes. If you cannot hear me, you can just type in no so that I can adjust my mic and ensure that everything is working as expected. And if for any reason you're not able to still hear me, maybe because there's some poor network issues going on, or you're joining from your mobile device and it's not really playing out well, this is being recorded and you will get a copy of this video in your email. So what exactly is DevOps? For the sake of those who have probably never heard of the word before. And so we're going to do a little bit of history here to understand what DevOps actually is, why, what led to it, what technologies are used within the DevOps space. But again, before we go deeper into all of that, I like to ask, why should I care? Why should you consider a career in DevOps? First of all, it pays a lot. Now, even though the screenshot you're seeing right in front of you is one that I took of a Google search on the average salary of DevOps engineer in the US, it doesn't matter where you may be. DevOps is one of those careers that has taken the IT world by storm and it's spreading like a wild weed. Now, in the US, the average DevOps engineer salary starts from about 135 grand. And even if you are looking for an entry position, you might be able to get yourself around 78K a year. And within a short period of time, you can literally climb the ladder and get yourself around 199, 200 grand a year. I've actually seen people earn much more than that. So this is being very, very conservative. The other thing to consider while making a decision to get into DevOps is to look at the demand. What I'd like you to do is to go to your LinkedIn account and do a similar search like I have on my screen right now. And just put the country in which you're connecting from and try to filter by the last 24 hours or the past week or the past month to have an idea of the number of jobs that get posted looking for DevOps engineers. As you can see here, in the past month in the US alone, there's over 7,000 jobs looking for DevOps engineers. And this is worldwide. In the whole world, there's over 20,000 jobs for DevOps engineers. Now, if we start to compare the demand versus supply of professionals who can apply for these jobs, you realize that the demand is heavily outweighing the supply of professionals. And you know what happens when the demand is more than supply? The price becomes really, really expensive. And that's why the job right now is paying so much for those who have the skill set to apply for such jobs. Now, before we go further into what exactly DevOps is, I like to say ahead of time that foundation is all that matters, okay? Because we're going to be talking about all the different tools that we use in DevOps. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed and confused as to where exactly to start. So this is what I say to most people, that foundation is all that matters, because a bad foundation in anything effectively leads to a whole new world of frustration. And that's why we try to make it so easy and simple for people to go through the very first foundations of getting into the world of DevOps. But then again, you might start wondering, what exactly is the solid foundation that I need? So the first thing is Linux. If you don't know what Linux is, it's just an operating system like Windows, because I do know a lot of people know Windows. So just think of it of another OS, but that is used when it comes to deploying applications and getting applications to run on servers. Now, being able to navigate yourself around the Linux OS on the terminal and being able to do administrative things is one of the most important and crucial things as you're taking your step into DevOps. Now, the next thing is cloud. Whether it's AWS or Google or Microsoft Cloud, it doesn't really matter because they all have the same concept around what they do in their public cloud offering. So a solid foundation in one of those public cloud solutions like AWS is an important foundation. And the third thing is programming. Now we'll get into this in detail soon because I know a lot of people have questions around, do I need to become a programmer to do DevOps? Well, for now, the short answer to that is yes and no. Yes, because you need the programming concepts around for loops and while loops and conditional statements and being able to put logic into what you're trying to do. And no, because DevOps engineers are not software developers. You're not writing algorithms or creating a front-end application as a DevOps engineer. Yes, you do need the understanding of the concept around it, but you're not expected to be a software developer to do DevOps. And the other question then will be, it's going to be difficult for me to do DevOps because I need to know programming. Well, it's not, because the most type of programming you do in DevOps is changing in the new world. And by the new world, I mean the open source community is doing a great job to standardize a lot of things we do. Most technologies now use what we call YAML, YAML, you can check it out, to standardize the language that we use for different technologies. For example, there's a technology called Ansible. The language we use to write Ansible files or playbooks is YAML. If you're working in Kubernetes, we use YAML. Docker Compose, YAML. Jenkins file now has YAML. GitLab CI uses YAML. So already I've mentioned about 5 different technologies that are using the same language. Unlike a software developer that has to know the syntax for PHP, for Java, for JavaScript, for Ruby, or any other programming language, which are completely different. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get deep into what DevOps actually is. Now, before we start talking about what exactly DevOps is, let's go back in time to see what used to happen before DevOps was introduced. And an enterprise IT department at that time would usually consist of 2 teams delivering IT services. And on the left here, you can see the software development team and the operations team. So these 2 are the major category of people that used to handle everything IT in a company. So the software guys, they develop the features, the website, the mobile apps, and everything that needs from a software development perspective. And the operations guys, they are the ones who take this software and deploy it to servers. They manage the operations of it. They do things to secure the environment, from networking to security, all those kind of things. These 2 put together makes up the entire enterprise IT department. Now let's take a look at what the standard organizational structure of each of those teams look like. So in the software development team, you would see that usually they would have the development manager and the software development team lead, the solutions architect, test manager, project manager, and below each of these guys, there are other guys like a software architect and a senior software engineer. All of these guys in this chart that I have summarized pretty much makes up the development team. And the operations team, on the other hand, that's where you see the network guys and the systems engineers, the support team that does the first, second, third line support. And these guys take the code that's been developed by the software guys, and they just ensure that users are able to use that after being deployed to the environment. And talking about environment, we have different environments from the development environment to the test environment to the staging. Some would have pre-production environment, and then the production environment, which is the actual website that your users would go on to the website to access. So before it got to the production, there are other dedicated environment that has been dedicated to testing and doing all sorts of things. Now, the question you would ask is, what is wrong with this setup? I mean, if this is what used to happen in those days, where the developers do their thing, the operations guys do their thing, what exactly is wrong with that? Now, there are a few things that's wrong with it, which can be categorized under communication, because developers want to develop and release software all the time, while the operations guys, they want to reduce the risk which gets introduced every time a new feature gets developed. And that causes communication breakdown between the two of them. So what most companies do to solve this communication problem between them is they create a change management process, which essentially takes the argument from the developers and considers whether or not that argument or the change is fit to go into the respective environment. In as much as this sounds more like a pretty good solution, it also brings its own challenges, which, number one, it causes delay. The change management process itself takes a long time. There is a meeting called the CAB meeting that the change management team will sit together and decide whether the developer's change is fit to go into production. So this process takes sometimes weeks, sometimes months, depending on how big the organization is. And because it takes a lot of time, it costs the business a lot of money, because not only will they have to set up a completely different team paying salaries for people going through the change, also it costs the business from a time perspective. Now, take for example that it's a Christmas period and the company website should have a feature that allows users to take advantage of some discount. Now, this is a feature on its own. If the development team has developed the feature, they need to release it to the production environment, but it has to go through change management process. Imagine if that process goes beyond the Christmas period before a decision was reached. Then it has cost the business a lot of money paying developers working on that feature. Also, the company cannot make money from their users because there hasn't been a solution for them to take advantage of discount. So it brings about a lot of problem in the area of cost to the business. And so to solve this problem and make things easy for the company to operate, two guys came in 2009 and decided to coin the word DevOps. Patrick Deboy from Belgium and Andre Clay Schaeffer, they came together to introduce the concept of DevOps. And DevOps is just a set of principles that guarantees faster communication between the developers and the IT operations guys. And why do we need this? For better communication, for collaboration, and fast delivery of software. So this is what DevOps is all about. So now that we know what DevOps is, let's take a deep dive into more about DevOps. The question then is, how does DevOps achieve this? Faster software delivery, collaboration between developers and the operations team. How does all this fit together? How does it happen? Now, that is where the DevOps toolchain come in. As a DevOps engineer, there are a set of tools that you need to know how to use to be able to make all of these things possible. If you're someone that has seen job descriptions of DevOps engineer, you will begin to see a few technologies and you start wondering, how the heck am I going to be able to know all of this? And you'll be wondering, how is one person is ever going to be able to learn many technologies like this just to become or just to do DevOps work? Well, it's quite easy. And that's what we're here to talk about. So to make life easy for you, I have decided to categorize all the different technologies into 8 categories. And I'll go through each of them and show you some of the technologies within them so you start getting more familiar with how things go around in the DevOps space. So the first one is the source code management. And this is where the developers spend their time to develop the code, because software developers write code anyway. So there has to be a tool that we use to manage the source code, especially when there are many developers working on the same project. How do we manage versions of code? How do we manage the code that developer A worked on and merge it together with what developer B has worked on? And so we don't have conflict and disagreement when it comes to who wrote what and what feature is what. The next one is continuous integration. And with continuous integration, there are so many things within that, from building the code to testing to releasing. And it's just a lot about being able to continually release the software to respective environment so that there is speedy delivery of software and there is better collaboration between the two teams. As part of what we do in DevOps is testing our code continuously. There are different frameworks and testing methodologies, which, even though we don't go deep into the details of each one of them today, I'll show you some of the tools that we use in DevOps to make these things happen. The other one, artifact repository. There are tools that allows us to store the code that developers have worked on and package them in such a manner that can easily be deployed and made available to the end users. There's release automation as well. There are tools we use to automate the release of software. There's infrastructure as code, which is essentially a way in which our operations team are now able to have the entire infrastructure in code. So think of the network, the servers, think of security, all of these things, being able to put it in a code that can be easily reproducible. Then we have applications monitoring, which is tools that allows us to monitor the performance of our applications even after they've been deployed. And finally, there are tools that allows us to do logging of both the infrastructure and the application. So all these tools, I'm going to talk about them today, and then we'll talk about how you can find yourself in a situation where you get to use these tools in the space of 3 months and begin to apply for DevOps jobs. Now, I'm going to go through each of those categories very quickly and just to show you some of those tools that are being used. So with source code management, as you already know, I've explained to you what it does. There are tools such as Git, Subversion, GitHub, GitLab, VSTS, TFS, Totus SVN. And the reason there is an arrow in between them is because there are different architectures around both. So the ones on the left focus more on a centralized approach, and the one on the right focus more on the decentralized approach. And the details of this, I wouldn't bother you too much because we're not in a training session right now. And if you made your way through to the DevOps mentorship program that we offer at Dari.io, then obviously you'll be able to understand the differences between them even more. Then the next one, how about the continuous integration? The whole concept around continuous integration is where we continually merge the developer's code to a shared repository several times a day. And doing that means to build the code. And what do I even mean by building the code? Think of when you download WhatsApp on your phone. You see, that WhatsApp application you've downloaded is the built version of the code that the developers have worked on. You're not downloading the code, which is just in the form of text. What you're downloading is the built version. And that's what we do at this phase. So what are the common CI tools? There's GitLab CI, there's Travis CI, there's Circle CIs, and there's Jenkins, which is the most popular one. How about infrastructure as code? Remember when I talked about the operations teams being able to have their entire infrastructure in code? Well, in the past, it happens that they used to buy physical servers. They go all the way to buy servers and switches and network racks and all that, and build a whole data center for the infrastructure. In today's modern age, we don't do that anymore. What we do is we create servers in the cloud. We use AWS Cloud, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba. There are so many public cloud companies today. And because of that, we can easily codify our infrastructure, right from the networking into the servers and configuring our securities and doing all of that. We're able to have our entire infrastructure as code. Now, as a DevOps engineer, you should know the technologies that allows us to be able to do that. Now, the technologies that gives us the ability to have infrastructure as code is separated into two. So we have the provisioning tools. We also have the configuration management tools. For provisioning, we have Terraform and AWS CloudFormation. For configuration management, there is Puppet, Ansible, Chef, SaltStack, and a few others. Getting your hands on these can dramatically change your career. How about application monitoring? When we have our applications deployed, how do we monitor the response rates, the error rates, all these different things? that gives us much more insight into what's happening in our application or how our users are using them. What happens, we have Nagios, we have New Relic, there's Sensu, there's Prometheus, Thanos, Grafana. There are a few tools that allows us to easily get into what's happening within the applications and make a lot of decisions based on the data we're able to gather. And then application and infrastructure logging, which is how we take logs from our applications and our infrastructure and being able to consolidate the data somewhere so that we can do more analytics on that. Analytics such as being able to identify some anomalies in our infrastructure, being able to detect fraud, and so many things that we can do. Well, there is Elk Stack, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, and recently FileBit, MetricBit, and a few other bits like PacketBit and WinLogBit that helps us send these metrics to a consolidated database. So as you can see, all of these put together helps us to have a complete CI, and we call it pipeline. So first of all, to have our code, and then to build it, test, package, release, configure, and monitor. So you see, now you know why DevOps pays so much, because there is so much to do. And I do hope that by now you're very excited to know more about how you can get your hand onto each of these tools and easily transform your career altogether. Well, at this point, I'm going to start talking about how we can help at Direct.io to help you to do that. But before I go into all of that, please start putting up your questions. You can send them in the chat, and I'm going to start addressing them one after the other. And take note, if there is any question that we're not able to answer in this webinar, we'll reach out to you personally and try as much as we can to address your concerns. Moving on to show you just a quick snapshot of some of the technologies we use in DevOps, some of which will become familiar to you already. Now, all these things are things that we would help you get hands-on in if you get into our DevOps mentorship program. But before I go into the details of how this mentorship bootcamp works, let's talk about a few facts. Learning these technologies requires a lot of experience. That's a fact. This is not to discourage you about getting into DevOps, but it's more to prepare you that you do need to get some hands-on experience, which is where we come in. And of course, you can learn most of these technologies from websites such as Udemy or Linux Academy or Pluralsight or any of these online training platforms. Those are okay if you're probably already working as a software engineer or someone who is in that line already and you have the tenacity and drive to self-learn. But if you're not, you need someone to help you, to pull you up by the hand, to give you the real-world experience that you require. Then what you do need is PBL, and that's what we call project-based learning, where you learn and implement the project as you do so. So, how can Direct.io help you? Well, we're poised to take you from zero to DevOps with a mentorship approach with hands-on projects as well. And here is an example of some of the different real-world use cases that you get to implement. So we give you architectural diagrams of what you have to do in addition to the tutorials that you have gotten. So you get to implement such projects. And during the project, we have a community on Slack where you get to interact with other learners and mentors and alumnus. And here is just a screenshot of some of the times where you can just come in, put your screenshot in there, get the type of help that you need to get you going. You post a question, and in the matter of minutes, you get someone respond to you willing to help you. In real time, you get interaction with mentors that can help you with all your problems. From time to time, we check on you to see how you're doing with your problems. So you don't just ask questions and you're left to figure it out yourself. If we don't hear back from you, we check on you to know what's going on. Have you been able to solve your problem? Do you need help? And these are examples of things that can quickly get you going and get you to your destination in a very short period of time. At the moment, we're about 93 people in this DevOps Bootcamp channel. So you get to network with a lot of different people. You get real-time feedback on your work. So the projects that you implement and submit for review, your mentor would review it and give you feedback And that gives you confidence in what you're doing, and it just moves you forward. At the moment, we have about 22 alumnus across the UK, US, and Canada. This is someone who's graduated from our program, currently working in DevOps. And here is another in the US. He graduated having gone through our PBL approach. Here's another alumni from the UK. And most of these people do not have any prior background in IT whatsoever. And by the way, the average earning from our alumni, for those from the UK, they earn between 400 to 600 pounds a day. In US and Canada, what we've seen so far is people getting jobs around 145 to 160 grand a year. Now, again, these are not just some figures that we just decided to put together. You can as well go ahead and search online for DevOps engineer jobs, just to give you an idea of what's obtainable out there. So I do hope at this point you're quite excited about getting into the world of DevOps. Now, if you would like to get into this DevOps mentorship program, you can start typing in the chat section to indicate your interest. And right now, I'd like to take a few questions. If there are any questions anyone would like to ask, I'll be happy to start taking them one after the other. So someone is asking, how much is it to get into the program? I'll get to that in a bit. And by the way, just because you're on this webinar today, you get access to 50% off what we are charging. And this offer is only available on this webinar. If you go on our website and you try to purchase from the website, you're not going to be able to get that discount. So stick around to claim your discount today while I take a couple more questions. So someone is asking, do I need to be a programmer to get into DevOps? Well, I had actually talked about this earlier on. Even though there is a flair of programming to DevOps, you're not expected to be a full-blown software developer to do DevOps work. Yes, there are programming concepts like the looping and conditions and things like that you do need to know to be able to do DevOps. But with a lot of practice, a lot of experience gathering through PBL, these things become very easy for you. So bear in mind, it's not the type of programming that requires writing algorithms and doing some mathematical calculations and things like that. And with the open source community, a lot of things are getting standardized such that you have just one language that can be used across multiple technologies, which is very awesome. Someone is asking, what's the duration of the program? Well, this program has been designed to help you manage your time. So it's a combination of self-paced tutorials that we have curated together for you to teach you each of the technologies. And as you're completing each course on specific technologies, for example, we start you off with Linux and then move you on to Git, and then you move on to Jenkins and Ansible and Docker, Kubernetes. You touch base on each of these technologies. And as you are completing courses on each technologies, there are projects that you get to work on. Each project will build you up from elementary and gradually move you up the ladder till you become an advanced player in the DevOps world. And just as I've shown you in a previous slide about a typical use case architectural diagram, it gets to a point in the course of the program where your project will start connecting all the different technologies together with you. So one use case will get you to work on Linux, Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, Nginx, and different things. You get to touch base on all these different things, and before you know it, you're already deploying solutions all by yourself. I can see a question. Someone is asking, how do you get the real world experience? So it gets to a point in the course of this program where you start working with other engineers. So we've designed the program such that the real world use case that you work on are based on companies that actually does exist. And as part of what we give you in the program is access to job reference. So working on real companies' projects, interacting with other developers using Git, Jira, and all these tools that are used in the real world, it helps you to build up the experience. And by the time you start going for interviews and you need a reference, the company that you have been working on that project will be able to provide you with reference because you have done this job. And by the way, some of the work that you've been doing will be on your GitHub account, which is publicly available, and recruiters can access it to see what you've been doing in the past few period. And all your code, your shell script, your Ansible code, your Terraform code, everything will be visible there, which you can gladly put on your CV as well. And by the way, one of the things we also offer is mock interview. So after you've done many projects and you're ready to start going for interviews, let's say after 3 months, we get you on a mock interview session where we drill you with questions and get you feedback. So this session helps you build your confidence in approaching an interview. So how much will it cost me to join this program? To get access to all the learning videos, all reward projects, mentorship community, mock interviews, job references, one-to-one mentorship. And by the way, that's one thing I haven't really talked on. So when you get into this program, depending on your subscription package, if the community has not really been helpful or you haven't really understood the conversation that's going on there, you have the opportunity to book one-to-one mentorship session with a mentor. And with that, we can get into your computer through screen share and we can try to understand what your problems you're going through, and we can give you all the mentorship and guidance you need to solve the project problems that you're facing. And like I said before, resume support. To get into the monthly subscription is $600 a month, and to pay for a quarter is $1,200. And like I said, today you get 50% off. What that means is you only get to pay $299 a month for a monthly subscription, and to book a 3-month quarter, you can pay $600, meaning you pay just for 2 months to access all this for 3 months. And this is just us saying, hey, we need you to focus on this for the next 3 months so that after 3 months you can start looking for work. So right now you have a button in front of you. If you want to take advantage of today's offering, you can just click on it and claim your discount. There's one more special bonus that we're giving you today. Claim access to our amazing community right now. This is a closed private community, but you can only access it having been on this webinar. For staying this long to listen to all the DevOps talk that we've been talking about, I truly appreciate you. And for that reason, you're getting free access today to our amazing community, so that even if you're not part of the program, you have problems you're trying to solve, you still have access to this community to help you from time to time. So claim your 50% discount right now, and also claim your access to our amazing DevOps bootcamp community. And I'd like to take a few more Q&A before we round off the session. I can see a whole lot of questions coming up the screen right now, but because of our time, I'm only going to take one more. And for those who haven't been able to address your question, our support team will reach out to you personally and will try to help you out as much as possible. So someone is asking, how real is it to learn all of these things in 3 months? And can I certainly get a 150K job a year after completing this program in 3 months? Thank you very much for that question. I truly appreciate that. And to answer your question, assuming you're someone who has no background in IT whatsoever, and you're coming into this for the first time, the first 4 weeks is going to focus on Linux. You're going to do a whole lot of work on Linux administration, learning about process management, learning how to configure disk, configuring logical volume management, the different web stacks from LAMP stack to LAMP stack to Mean stack and MERN stack, and doing all these different things in the whole 1 month. That's what you're going to be doing. After that, you start implementing the same projects that you've been implementing manually using Linux, and then you start automating them with Ansible. And while you're doing that, you're doing projects around Jenkins, you're creating continuous integration pipeline, and by the 3rd month, you're already doing things around Docker and Kubernetes. Now, with this set of tool set that you would have achieved within 3 months, is enough to start getting you through the door. Even if it's just an entry-level job, which usually is around 70 to 80K a year if you're in the US. But most of the time, you would take all you've learned in 3 months and get jobs that are way beyond the entry level. And we've seen this happen through the different people that have been going through this program. So it all depends on how much of time you spend practicing and doing the different projects that we have put together. If you've been dedicated doing all of these things, then you stand a better chance. I do hope this has been very informative for you. If you have more questions, even after this webinar has closed, you can send an email to support@darey.io. And that is support, SUPPORT, at Darey, DAREY.io. And we'll be happy to answer any of your questions and become guide to you as far as this DevOps journey is concerned. Well, thank you so much. And this is where we're going to end today's webinar. And I look forward to seeing you in our Slack channel. Take care for now. Bye-bye.